The kitchen tile was cold against my heels. I remember that more than anything else from that night, the cold pressing up through my slippers like the house itself was trying to warm me. I had come down for water. Just water. My throat had been doing that dry, papery thing it does when the heat kicks on too high, and at 76, you learn to listen to small complaints before they become big ones. I didn't turn on any lights. I knew this house. I'd been living in it for 14 months, ever since my husband Raymond passed and my daughter said the words every widowed mother eventually hears. Mom, you can't be alone out there. Come stay with us, just for a little while. A little while. I was halfway down the hall when I heard them. The pocket doors between the family room and the back office were closed, but not latched, and my daughter's voice came through that gap the way smoke comes under a door, thin and impossible to ignore. She signed the wrong line. I stopped. "You're sure?" My son-in-law. Lower. Annoyed. Annoyed. "I told you we should have waited until she had her glasses off. She caught the date. I had to laugh it off and say it was a draft. Bring it back tomorrow morning. I'll redo the page with the durable clause. And the Greenbriar paperwork? Greenbriar can take her Monday. They have the bed." I didn't move. I don't think I breathed. There's this stillness that happens to a body when it understands, all at once, what kind of story it's actually in. I'd watched my mother go through it in 1989, and I'd thought I was prepared for that kind of moment. I wasn't. My daughter said very quietly, very practically, like she was talking about a roast in the oven. "I just wish she'd stop being so present about everything. It would be easier if she was further along." That was the part that did it. Not Greenbriar, not the forged signature, not even the Monday move-in date for a memory care facility I'd never agreed to. It was easier if she was further along. I went back upstairs. I did not get my water. I sat down on the edge of the guest bed. They called it the guest room even though I'd been in it for 14 months. And I put my hands flat against my thighs and I listened to the house tick and settle. The clock on the dresser said 11,047. My granddaughter was at a sleepover. My son-in-law had to be at work by 7. My daughter taught a yoga class at 9. I had until morning. I have lived a long enough life to know that grief and anger feel almost identical in the body. They both sit in the chest and make the hands shake. The difference is what you do with them. Grief makes you sit down. Anger gets you moving. I'm grateful that what I felt that night finally was anger, because grief would have left me there on that bed until they walked in to collect me. I packed quietly. Not much. I'd learned, after Raymond, that you do not need most of what you own. A tote bag, the soft canvas one from the Historical Society fundraiser. 2 changes of clothes. My medications, all of them, and the original prescription bottles. My passport. My checkbook for the credit union. The small one in Burlington that my daughter didn't know existed because Raymond and I had opened it the year we got married, and we'd never closed it. And it had a few $1,000s in it that I'd been moving in slowly, $25 at a time. The way my mother had taught me, Linnea, always have a tin under the floorboard, even from the man you love. I took my reading glasses. I took the wedding photograph from the dresser, the small one, not the silver-framed one they'd hung downstairs. I took Raymond's pocket watch. I left the cell phone they'd given me. I'd realized 2 months ago they were tracking it. My daughter had said something casual at dinner about my pharmacy run taking longer than usual, and there was no other way she could have known. I'd been writing it off as motherly worry. I am ashamed now of how long I let myself write things off. I went down the back stairs in stocking feet carrying my shoes. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "Went to early service. Don't wait breakfast. Mom." It was Friday. There was no early service on Friday. But she would see the note and assume, the way she'd been assuming everything about me for over a year, that I was operating on autopilot. By the time she figured out otherwise, I would have a head start. I walked 7 blocks to the all-night diner on Pearl Street, and I sat in a booth, and I ordered coffee, and I waited for the sun to come up. The first person I called was my sister. We hadn't spoken in 11 years. Not because of a fight, because of one of those slow, polite distances that opens up between sisters when their husbands don't get along, and one of them moves to Asheville and the other one stays in Vermont. Hers was the only number I still knew by heart, because she'd had it since 1978, and she was the kind of woman who would sooner replace a kidney than a phone number. "It's me," I said. There was a long pause, and then she said, "Linnea, are you still in the same house?" "Yes. Can I come down for a while? I don't have a phone right now and I can't tell you over the line." "How long do you need?" "I don't know yet." She didn't ask another question. She said, "There's a Greyhound from Burlington at 6:42. I'll meet you in Charlotte at the depot. Don't pay with your card." I cried for the first time then, into the hash browns, and the waitress, bless her, refilled my coffee and pretended she didn't see. I want to stop here and tell you something, because I know how stories like this go. I know what people expect. They expect the woman to fall apart, or to scream at her daughter, or to burst into the office of some dramatic attorney and demand justice in a single afternoon. They expect a fight scene. That isn't what happened. What happened was much smaller and much slower, and in some ways much harder, because I had to do every single piece of it on my own with a hand that was still shaking and a heart that had not yet stopped, flinching every time a phone rang. I want you to know that, if you're listening to this and you're in your own version of that hallway, in your own pair of cold slippers, you do not have to be brave the way television wants you to be brave. You can be brave the way I was, which was tired and humiliated, and one careful step at a time. The bus ride was 18 hours. I slept for maybe 2 of them. I kept the tote bag on my lap the whole way, even when my arms went numb, and I rehearsed in my head what I was going to do when I got off. I am a planner. I have been a planner since I was 8 years old, and the family ran out of heating oil in February, and my mother and I had to stretch a half cord of wood for 9 days. You learn to think in steps. Step 1, get to my sister's. Step 2, open a new account at her credit union. Step 3, find an attorney, not anyone connected to my daughter, my son-in-law, or our church, not anyone in the state of Vermont, ideally. Step 4, revoke the power of attorney. Step 5, stop the house sale if it hadn't already gone through. Step 6, do not let them find me until every single piece of paper was signed. My sister Bernadine was waiting at the depot in a navy peacoat I recognized from 1996. She did not hug me. She took my bag and she said, "There's a roast in the oven. We'll talk after you eat." I love her for that. I will love her for that until the day I die. The next morning, Bernadine drove me into town, and we sat in a small law office above a bakery on Main Street. The attorney was a woman named Patrice. She was maybe 50, gray at the temples, with the kind of measuring eyes that good attorneys have. She poured me a cup of coffee, and she said, "Tell me everything, slowly, from the beginning, and don't worry about whether it sounds crazy. I have heard crazier this week." So I told her. I told her about Raymond's death, and the insurance, and how my daughter had handled the paperwork, because I was, at the time, not sleeping and not eating, and not really capable of reading a sentence twice without losing the second half of it. I told her about the move from our house in Stowe. I told her about the moment, 6 months in, when my daughter asked me to sign just a couple of things, Mom, so I can help you with the bills. I told her about the durable power of attorney I now suspected I had signed. Patrice asked me, "Did you read it?" I said, "I read the first page." She nodded. She did not make me feel stupid. She wrote things down on a yellow pad, very fast, and then she said, "All right. Here is what we're going to do. We were going to do the following. We were going to file an immediate revocation of the power of attorney, effective the moment it was notarized, and we were going to send certified copies to every bank, brokerage, and title company my daughter could conceivably have contacted. We were going to put a freeze on my Social Security direct deposit and reroute it to the new account. We were going to file a request for an accounting. Every transaction made on my behalf in the last 14 months. We were going to contact the title company in Stowe and find out whether the house had in fact been listed, sold, or transferred, and if so, whether the signature on the deed matched mine. And the memory care facility, Patrice said. "Greenbriar, you said?" "Yes. They can't admit you without your consent unless they have a court order. They don't have a court order. We're going to make sure they know you exist and you have not consented, and you are not, in fact, exhibiting any cognitive decline that would justify involuntary commitment. I will send them a letter tomorrow." I started to cry again. I was so tired of crying. She slid a box of tissues across the desk, and she said, very gently, "Linnea, this is going to take 8 to 12 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you, but I have done this before, and you came to me early, and you brought your own documents, and that puts you in the best possible position. The hardest part is already behind you. You left. I want to talk about my granddaughter for a minute. Her name is Coralie. She is 15. She is my mother's exact face, which is a strange and tender thing to live with, and she had been for the entire 14 months I lived with my daughter, the only reason I didn't ask to leave sooner. Coralie made me tea in the afternoons. Coralie sat on the foot of my bed and told me about the boy in her geometry class. Coralie had asked me, once, very quietly, "Grandma, are you happy here?" And I had said yes because I didn't want to make her carry it. In the third week at Bernadine's, a letter came. It was addressed to me at Bernadine's house in my daughter's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time on the kitchen table before I opened it. I want to be honest about this part because the people listening to this story deserve honesty. I had been very careful. I had not used my real name when I opened the new credit union account. I'd used my maiden name, Linnea Whitlock, which I hadn't gone by since 1971. I had not contacted anyone from my old life. I had not even been to the post office in town under my own name. I'd been picking up Bernadine's mail when she asked me to, and that was the extent of my postal life. So how, I thought, did the letter get here? I opened it with a butter knife, slowly, the way you'd open a thing that might contain a wasp. It was 2 pages. The first page was my daughter's handwriting. Very neat, very sweet, the way she wrote thank you notes when she was 12. "Mom, we have been so worried. Please come home. We were never trying to hurt you. There has been a misunderstanding. The papers were for your protection." The second page was a different letter, typed, from a Vermont attorney I'd never heard of. It informed me that a hearing had been scheduled in family court regarding a guardianship petition filed on my behalf, and that my failure to appear could result in a default ruling. The hearing was in 9 days. My hands started doing the shaking thing again. I called Patrice from Bernadine's kitchen phone. She listened. She said one word, very quietly, "Good, good." They tipped their hand. "Linnea, listen to me carefully. The fact that this letter reached you means they used a skip tracing service, which is legal, but it also means they have committed the next thing they're going to do to paper. We can see it coming. I want you to bring me both pages today. And I want you to think about something. You asked me, last week, how they would ever find you. Did you sign up for anything in the last 3 weeks? Anything at all? Library, pharmacy, a magazine?" I sat with that. I filled out a change of address card, I said slowly, for my modern maturity subscription. So Bernadine wouldn't keep getting it forwarded. "That's it," she said. "That's how. They have a paid service watching for any USPS forwarding tied to your social. I want you to listen, because this is important. This is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. But from here on out, anything that has your name on it goes to a post office box in a town where you do not live. I'll set it up tomorrow." I sat at Bernadine's kitchen table, and I put my forehead down on the wood for a minute, and Bernadine, without saying anything, put a hand on the back of my neck, the way our mother used to when one of us had a fever. The hearing was on a Thursday. I drove up with Patrice, 8 hours through the mountains, and we stayed in a motel outside Montpelier the night before. I did not sleep. I sat by the motel window in a chair, and I watched the parking lot lights buzz, and I rehearsed my answers to questions I might be asked. In the courtroom, my daughter was already seated when we walked in. She did not turn around. I saw the back of her head, the part of her hair I had brushed when she was 4, and for a moment the entire thing, the durable POA, the Greenbriar paperwork, the easier she was further along, broke against the simple animal fact of her hair, and I almost lost my nerve. Then her attorney stood up and began to describe me as a woman in cognitive decline who had wandered away from a safe and loving home in a moment of confusion, and the nerve came back like a tide. Patrice was magnificent. She had a binder. The binder had tabs. She produced, in order, my driver's license, current and unexpired, the affidavit from my new physician in North Carolina, who had spent 2 hours with me the previous week and concluded that I was of fully sound mind, the certified copy of my revocation of power of attorney, dated 3 weeks ago and properly notarized, the bank statements showing $23,000 in transfers from my retirement account into an LLC I had never heard of, registered to my son-in-law's law partner, and the listing agreement dated 4 months ago for the Stowe house, with a signature on the bottom line that did not match any of the 17 samples of my real signature, also included in the binder. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She read for a long time. Then she looked over the top of her reading glasses, and she asked my daughter, very calmly, "Were you aware that your mother had not consented to the listing of her marital home?" My daughter said, "Your Honor, my mother was—" "Yes or no, please. It's complicated. Yes or no, please. It's complicated. Yes or no, please." There was a long pause. My daughter looked down at the table. "No," she said. The judge denied the guardianship petition. She referred the matter of the forged signature to the state attorney general's office for review. She vacated the listing agreement. She ordered an accounting of every transaction made under the durable power of attorney within 30 days. When we walked out of the courthouse, Patrice said, "You did beautifully. You barely had to say a word." I said, "I know. That was the point." The state attorney general's office moved slowly, which is how those offices move. It took 11 months. In the end, my son-in-law surrendered his law license. They let him surrender it rather than fight, and pled to a misdemeanor count of forgery and a felony count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He served 4 months. My daughter was not charged. She was not charged because Patrice and I had a long, quiet conversation about it, and I made a choice. I made a choice that I want to talk about because I know some of you listening to this will disagree. I chose not to push for charges against my daughter, not because she didn't deserve them. She did, but because of Coralie. Because Coralie had already lost her father to a prison cell, and I was not going to be the one who took her mother too. I had spent 51 years building Coralie's mother into a person, and I could not, in the end, be the hand that finally undid her. That is not forgiveness. I want to be very clear. That is a different thing. It is the calculation a grandmother makes about how much pain one 15-year-old can carry. My daughter sent me a letter after the criminal case wrapped, 10 pages long, full of explanations and reasons and things her therapist had said. I read it once. I put it in a drawer. I did not respond. I have not responded since. Some doors close, and what closes them is not anger. What closes them is the knowledge that you cannot, at 76, afford to keep being optimistic about the same person. Coralie found me a year and 3 months after I left. She was 16 by then. She'd gotten her learner's permit, and she talked her best friend's older sister into driving her down to North Carolina. And she showed up on Bernadine's porch on a Saturday afternoon with a backpack and a face I almost couldn't look at because it was so much like my mother's. She said, "Grandma, I read everything. I read all of it." I went into Mom's office and I read every email. I said, "Come inside, sweetheart." She said, "I should have asked you better when I asked you if you were happy. I should have asked you better." I held her on the porch for a long time. I told her there was nothing in the world she should have done. I told her she was 15 years old when it happened, and her job at 15 was to be 15, and she had done that beautifully. I told her that I had not wanted her to know any of it, that I had specifically kept it from her, that she was not a child who had failed to notice. She was a child who had been protected, on purpose, by everyone who loved her, including me. She comes down to visit twice a year now. She is 21. She is in nursing school. She told me last summer that she wants to specialize in geriatrics, and when I asked her why, she said, "Because somebody should be paying attention." I live in a small house now, 2 bedrooms, a screened porch. It's 6 blocks from Bernadine. We have lunch every Wednesday. I volunteer 3 mornings a week at the public library, in the local history room, helping people trace their family trees, which is funny when you think about it, given everything. I'm registered there under my maiden name. I keep a post office box in the next town over. I have never given my home address to a single person who was not my sister, my granddaughter, or my attorney. I want to leave you with the practical things because I know some of you are listening because you are afraid, and I don't want to leave you afraid without leaving you ready. If you suspect what I suspected, and I hope to God you don't, but I know some of you do, please listen. Open a small account today at a credit union your family does not know about. Move $20 into it, then 40, then 60. Build a quiet floor under yourself. Do not sign anything you have not read twice, on a different day with your reading glasses on, in a room without your children in it. In a room without your children in it. Get a post office box in a town that is not your town. Find a doctor your children did not find for you, and go alone, and let that doctor write down in your file that you are of sound mind on this date. Do this every year. Keep a copy of your own important papers, birth certificate, marriage license, deeds, prescriptions, in a place outside your house. A safe deposit box, a trusted friend's closet, anywhere but inside the 4 walls where someone might one day decide it would be easier if you were further along. Have one person in this world whose phone number you know by heart. Not stored, known. Memorize it. The day you need it, you will not have your phone. And listen to me on this last one, because it is the hardest one and the one I almost got wrong. When the small voice in the back of your throat says something is not right here. When your daughter is a little too cheerful about a stack of papers. When your son-in-law mentions a facility you have never heard of. When somebody laughs off your question about a date on a form. Please, believe yourself. You have spent your whole life learning to read a room. You did not lose that skill the day your hair turned gray. You did not lose that skill the day your husband died. The voice in your throat is not paranoia. It is 50, 60, 70 years of pattern recognition, and it is trying to save your life. The cold tile under my heels saved my life. The pocket door that didn't latch saved my life. The pocket door that didn't latch saved my life. My mother, whispering across the decades about a tin under the floorboard, saved my life. My sister, who picked up the phone after 11 years and didn't ask a single question, saved my life. But before any of them could, I had to do the one thing nobody could do for me. I had to get up off the edge of the bed. I had to put on my shoes. I had to walk down the back stairs in the dark, carrying everything I could carry, and trust that on the other side of the door, somewhere I had not yet seen, there was a life that still belonged to me. There still is, and if you are sitting on the edge of your own bed tonight, in your own dark hallway, listening to your own quiet whisper through your own unlatched door, there is one for you too. Get up, walk. I'll be at the diner. I have thought a great deal, in the years since that cold tile under my heels, about how a person ends up where I ended up. Not the dramatic version. The quiet version. The version where a kind woman who raised her daughter carefully, who paid her taxes on time, who never once raised her voice at a grocery clerk, somehow finds herself sitting on the edge of a guest bed at 11:37 on a Tuesday night, listening to the people she loves most in the world plan her disappearance. I think the answer is simpler than I wanted it to be. I made myself small, slowly, over the months after my husband Raymond died, because I believed that being small was the same thing as being grateful. I let my daughter handle the mail. I let her drive me to the doctor. I let her sign me up for a phone plan I did not understand. Each one of those was a small kindness from her and a small surrender from me, and the surrenders added up the way water adds up against a wall. Eventually the wall fails, and you are surprised, even though the water has been there the whole time. That is the cause. The effect was Greenbriar. What pulled me out of it was not courage in the cinematic sense. It was the sound of my own daughter saying it would be easier if I were further along. Some sentences land in the body, like a key turning in a lock you did not know you had. The lock turned, and underneath it was a woman I thought I had forgotten. The one my mother raised with a tin under the floorboard. The one who knew, without being told, that loving a person and trusting a person are two entirely different acts. I want my granddaughter Coralie to inherit that woman, not the small one. I want her to know that being good to the people you love does not require handing them the pen. I want her to know that intelligence is not suspicion. It is reading a document twice on a different day, with your glasses on, in a room without anyone's smile pressing on you to hurry. And I want her to know that perseverance, the real kind, is not the loud kind. It is the 8 to 12 weeks of paperwork. It is the 18-hour bus ride. It is the certified mail receipts you keep in a folder labeled in your own handwriting. If there is a single thing I have learned, it is this. Kindness without sense becomes fuel for someone else's fire. Sense without kindness becomes a cage you build for yourself. You need both, all the way through, and you need them most on the night the floor goes cold under your feet, and the voice in your throat says, "Get up." I got up. That is the whole story. Everything after. Bernadine's roast, Patrice's binder, the judge in her reading glasses, was just me walking the rest of the way.